Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Actually, this episode is the beginning of the week culminating in Father's Day on Sunday. So the first father-son duo that I'm interviewing today is Steve Ivy and his son, Chris. Actually, it's Chris and his father, Steve. Steve, very notable coin dealer, co-founder of Heritage Auctions. But Chris is the sports guy and the son within Heritage and has just done a great job. They've been one of my sponsors. I've known Steve for a long time. I've actually known Steve longer than I've known Chris, but I know Chris now from the hobby and really respect what he's built there within what his dad had built, doing some great stuff there. So thanks other sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Huggins & Scott Auctions, now part of REA, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. It's been a tradition to do some fathers and sons. I've got more coming this week, and it may even creep into next week. Sunday's Father's Day. This is a terrific father-son hobby. My dad had been more of a stamp collector, but he loved sports. He played baseball in college, and he had his cards that I wound up getting back at Christmas of 1959. So my dad was a collector of sorts, a great man, and he passed away after I had recorded the episodes last year, because he passed away right around this time last year. So he's missed, and so this year's Father's Day episodes also have a little flavor of fathers that are no longer there, that have passed on some great traditions, collecting and otherwise. So thanks, Steve. Thanks, Chris, for sharing your time. I've been wanting to get you guys on for a couple of years. I've had Chris and his very capable, outstanding associates from time to time, but I've been wanting to get the father-son, Steve and Chris. And here it is.
The last few years, been trying to get you guys on together because I've done a series of father-son episodes during Father's Day week. My father passed away a year ago, and I always had that as a standard. But thinking about this, when I was growing up, my dad, who was a successful businessman and entrepreneur, we talked about business. We had a large family. We had dinners together. I'm wondering if you guys did that. When Chris was growing up, were you taking your son to work, or were you talking about it at the dinner table? How did Chris get to be smart?
Chris, you can jump in here because neither of us have perfect memories in this room. But we didn't talk a lot about business, as I recall. We talk a lot more about business now than we did then, obviously. In terms of dinner table talk and that kind of thing, not so much. I'm sure he asked some questions along the way. A lot of it was observational. We used to travel together, that is, the family. We'd come out to the Long Beach show, as an example, and we'd tie a rope onto him and let him loose in the coin show. And he would go out and ask questions, and he had pretty good working knowledge that a 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old can get, and paying attention. But in terms of sitting down with a pencil and paper and saying, this is the way it works, and here's a list of rules, I can't even get him to follow the rules now. I sure couldn't get him to follow the rules when he was like 12, at least business rules. I'm sure you've heard the story about how we brought him out to your place. He had just moved over the toll road, and his mother took him over there after school one day, and she didn't even know what he was doing, I don't think. He wanted to go over there, and she stayed out in the car. And so he went in and came back 20 minutes later, or an hour and a half later, or whatever. But she asked him what he was doing. He said he was trying to get it. And apparently you guys had rules against trying to conform with the child labor law rules, and sent him on his merry way. But his goal, as communicated by his mom, was he wanted to get the price listings before everybody else got it. Basically, if you'd been selling securities, he would have been trying to be an insider trader. Fortunately, that never happened. Anyway, at that point, I was pretty sure we didn't need any kind of genetic testing for paternity.
Don't you think being involved in collectibles, especially when there's a monetary component, it's not all about the money, but with coins, with sports memorabilia, if you're a young person, under 18, let's say, 12, whatever, you're learning about business at the most basic level. I just think it's great preparation for a young person. Now, your son was very aware of Heritage. He chose getting into sports and bringing you guys into it, which was awesome.
He did. He definitely had an affinity for sports, and collecting is a genetic disorder. Okay. And Chris inherited that deviant gene. And so he was a collector, but he also liked to buy and sell. And I'm not even sure where those two things crossed with me. I have a theory. And so I'm not sure at what point in time Chris said, I have more fun buying and selling than I do collecting. He was an accumulator, and he had boxes and played with it. And then he traded with his next door neighbor and other kids, usually taking advantage of them somewhat. He got hooked, and we sent him off to college, and he wasn't hooked so bad that he didn't want to go to school. But when he came back, he had some jobs in college, being a bartender, which gives you good people skills, but doesn't necessarily help you with your business skills. Then when he came back, he went to work for
SGC
up there for months. And then he came back and we started. It wasn't an auction initially, but we gave him an office and gave him some money to buy an inventory. And he did that for a couple of years. After that, we started with auction.
Chris, I hope you'll back me up on this. What I think is the greatest hobby in the world, and I'm not
absolutely
coin collecting, I'm saying it's sports and sports memorabilia collecting. So do we have 2 against 1 here?
I think we'd certainly
I'm an equal opportunity employer here. We have comics, it's awfully good.
Okay.
Sports is obviously great. But I wouldn't disagree that it's certainly a vibrant and robust hobby and will continue to be.
Back to your first question, as far as talking business growing up and whatnot, my recollection is similar to my father's in that I did pick up things out, but when he came home from work, he left work at the office, something I picked up and that I still try to practice today. Work your tail off, but when you get home, it's family time. If it comes up, so be it, but we certainly didn't dwell on it. I will say he was always there if I had questions about anything. He was always eager to help and just being around. I spent some summers working at Heritage in the mail room and doing a few things when I was younger in high school, working in inventory control. It's nice having that opportunity to be around the business. But when I grew up, I never thought I would be a part of Heritage because Heritage was a coin and currency company and I had no interest in those. So if you would ask young Chris where he was going to work when he grew up, he'd probably say something like Beckett or Donruss. But thankfully the timing worked. And with the growth of the internet and HA.com, as Steve alluded to, I was able to come in early on and then usher in the sports department and growing up from there. So it's been quite a ride and it's already been 24 years, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. After a lot.
Chris, we would have hired you if you had been old enough, I think. But here, I want to segue. Did you learn from your dad, or how did you pick up on the fact that you, in your division, I'm more familiar, Steve, with Chris's sports division.
Of course.
You have outstanding associates that you've brought on board. And I'm sure there's outstanding people all through Heritage, but in particular in the sports, you've really brought in some outstanding people. Now, I tried to do that too. And I attribute some of that to my dad, that all problems in a big business are people problems typically. And you got good people. So how did you pick up on that? Because that's crucial.
That's a good question. And it's absolutely true. Our team here is second to none. And we're really proud to have built this team, which I consider our lineup of 27 Yankees of sports collectibles. And I have to give credit. That's from our executive team. They've always preached bringing on talent when you can, especially in these different markets, because sometimes it's hard to find talent. And when that talent is available, you bring them on board and you figure it out. That's something that came from Steve and his partner, Jim Halperin. And then keeping those relationships with our experts and being a good manager to them and giving them the opportunities to do what they can do best. So yeah, we feel very lucky to have the team that we have put together. And I'm glad that I'm able to keep them. Sometimes it's like herding cats, like anything, but we try to keep everybody on the same page and rowing in the same direction. And for the most part, we're able to do that.
I just hired people that were sharp, that would love their job, would love working in the industry. And like I said, being a team player is important, but they have your own individual output. So just kudos to you guys. People think that business success is an accident, or it's being lucky, or you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Now, yes, you probably were in the right place at the right time, but even that, in many cases, is not by accident.
There is an element of luck to it. There's no question that's true. I came up at a time where the collectibles were evolving and exploding in some cases, and it's a reasonably unregulated business. I don't think I could replicate what I did over the last 50 years, or anybody could over the next 50 years. There's just too many hurdles for that to happen. So I'm lucky in that regard. And as Chris points out, we do have a lot of good people, but good people bring in more good people. You get to the point where my biggest talent was not screwing up. And the herding cats aspect of it is a big deal too. You have a lot of personalities and you make sure that everybody is relatively happy. I think Chris's burden in that regard with his group, in terms of specific categories, is probably more difficult than anybody's. I'm not sure why that is, but a lot of strong personalities. But they all like to work with other people that are strong. To use the sports analogy, you don't see these aging out 37-year-old basketball players that could sign a max contract. If they don't have a ring, they want to go to a team where they can get a ring, and they'll play for less money. Have that kind of or atmosphere, I guess is the right word. So we have a lot of great people.
My sense is that both you guys have done it by self-funding the growth, because that allows you to have more control over making good choices. But not everybody in our industry does that. We did that. When you can do that, that's the ideal way to do it.
Yeah, our business is unique. There's a lot of really smart people, much smarter than I have, graduate from Ivy League and go to work for McKinsey or Bain or somebody, and you stick them in this business and they're major fish out of water.
They try to poison the water.
They don't try. They just think that they know
They
everything.
drop some tablets in there of their wisdom to try to change the temperature or the color of the water.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And by the time they figure out it doesn't work, it's too late.
And that happens with coins too? Or I'm not really thinking about sports cards, but you're talking coins even?
We've had people coming. General Mills used to own part of Bowers and Ruddy, and we've had institutional money involved in the business before. They basically give it all away and leave.
Touched on the retaining talent. What Heritage offers is that it's run by collectors that understand these markets and understand the ups and downs and the ins and outs of it. It's nice having an executive group that has been through these battles and understands everything.
As an example, our conversation about NFT was entirely different than collectors' conversation about NFTs. Ours was, what the hell are these? Nobody's going to collect these. How can we sell them and how can we, leverage them out? Some of my partners, they wanted to do it. And I said, okay, you guys go over here in the corner, okay, and make as small an imprint as you possibly can, and we'll test it. Okay.
A fraction.
Are you down on crypto or just?
No, NFTs. No, crypto's an entirely different matter.
You guys accept crypto?
We don't hang on to it when we accept it. We immediately turn it into cash. But sure, we're mercenaries in it. But we wouldn't suggest anybody collect it. Although we are selling some of the physical coins. Well, I'm not sure why anybody would buy those either. Having been in the coin business for 50 years, I basically have seen everything.
The